Cool. So we are recording. We're here at Mothers Illuminated with Mojene. Super excited to have her here. Mojene and I know each other pretty well, so it's really great to be able to talk on a podcast show and kind of give everybody else the deets of what we're normally chatting about. But Mojene, I'd like you to kind of tell everyone a little bit about who you are, what you do, and the story as to how you got there.
Okay, so first of all, I am a mom. So I have a 4-year-old and a 5-month-old, which is fun. And I just started my entrepreneur journey in October of last year. And I really started getting interested in it. I started with social media, just posting a lot. And then I found Michelle and she helped me figure out that I actually wanted to do more. So I help mompreneurs. Basically, it's like personal assistant work. I'm working on creating my school group. I'm not creating it, but pivoting it. I'm calling it System Flows, and it'll be all of the systems you put in place with a personal assistant, just minus the person holding your hand and doing it for you. So, and then I'll also do one-on-one work. So that's what I'm currently working on. Getting to where I am today, though, I always have to go back to 2015. That was when I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, because that has influenced my life immensely. I was a normal college student. Then I woke up one day and half my body was numb, and it stayed that way for 2 weeks. So I finally went to the doctor, got an MRI, and the doctor called me and said, I have good news and bad news. The good news is we know what's wrong. The bad news is you have 20 plus lesions in your brain and you have multiple sclerosis. And lesions are just scars in your brain. And so from that point through the next 6 months, I went steadily downhill until I had the behavior of like a 5-year-old child. I don't really remember. It was about a month. I walked with 2 canes. And then I got put on the right medication, and a bunch of people prayed for me and fasted for me. My name got sent to the Vatican. Like, lots of people prayed for me. And I started to get better. But I got better mentally, like I came to myself before I was able to walk again or see clearly. So I was really depressed. I didn't feel like there was a purpose to my life. I was just there needing to be taken care of, and it didn't feel worthwhile. And again, I was praying, and I was inspired that as long as I am helping people, I have a purpose on earth, even if I'm helping people only by allowing them to help me, because that helps people too. So that's when I started to fight, and I learned a ton about taking small steps, because I went from not being able to walk to walking with 2 canes to holding onto my dad's arm as we went on runs. And so the biggest thing I learned in that time was that for success in life, you need to take small steps, because 1 year later, like I was walking with 2 canes, 1 year later, I ran a half marathon. And it didn't happen overnight. It wasn't like, because I am this amazing athletic person, I am an average human being, not superhuman at all. But I took the small steps necessary to get there. And so I've been learning with the entrepreneur journey that is exactly the same way you have to go, is just taking small steps, and then you'll get there when you get there.
I love that so much in your 100% right. I found the same thing. It's the small steps, no matter what you're doing, whether it's for your health, whether it's for, any type of goal you're trying to hit, right? Growing as a person, growing as a parent, growing as, even just cleaning a house. Sometimes it's like overwhelming, like, oh my goodness, the kids have made a disaster. What do I do? It's like, start with one corner and work your way out, just one thing at a time. And I love that because I think so many times we get overwhelmed by all the stuff that's going on. And there was a great thing that I had read once, which was some days you're just going to have to do the dishwasher twice. I don't know if you've heard that. But
No, I haven't.
the concept is like, how sometimes like if you don't have enough energy to wash the dishes and you put them into the dishwasher, it's like, well, I'm not going to do the dishes because I don't have the energy to wash the dishes before I put them in the dishwasher. But it's like, what's the alternative? Your dishes are just going to pile up and be disgusting. So sometimes it's okay to just do the dishwasher twice. Just put it all in the dishwasher anyway, run it. And if there's still food on it, run it again, like
I
do
love
what you
that.
can to get to the next step, and I love that analogy of just like doing, like just knowing that it's just one step after another. I'd love to kind of go into your story a little bit.
Okay.
And kind of go into, because now you're a mom. So this was back when you were in college. So did you become a mom after the marathon?
Yeah. So I met my husband in 2017, and we actually have ran a half marathon together as well. And it's a long story, but I had a cracked bone in my foot and it was miserable, but I did it anyways. No. So there's a lot of good lessons there too, but we don't have to go into that. So I became a mom in 2021. I had another bad relapse when I was pregnant. But my daughter is beautiful and wonderful. She's 4. But MS does still affect me every day. Like this morning I woke up and my left hand is numb and tingly. And throughout the morning it's spread up my arm and down my back and down one of my legs. And it's likely just because I've had a long week. But it's the kind of thing where you don't know if it means something worse. And so you're very much living with uncertainty, and living like that, I think, has made me more resilient with the difficulties of other things as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you feel like the uncertainty has also helped you kind of live more in the moment as well?
Absolutely. Sometimes it's because I am either in denial or am on purpose not thinking about something.
Yeah.
But when I'm intentional about being present, then I'm a lot happier.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of times too, like we try to think about, like worst case scenarios. I feel like that comes up all the time, especially as like moms. Like, I don't know about you guys, but I am constantly in my brain. It's like, what happens if the building goes up in smokes? Like, what do I do with all my kids? How do I get them out of here fast enough? Right. Yeah. If I'm driving, what happens if like we plummet into the ocean somehow? Right. Like, and that could be postpartum anxiety. Maybe someone's got to like check me there, but, I think, like, do you kind of have some of those thoughts too with like MS? Like, what if I go back to needing 2 canes, being the same age as my now child,
Absolutely. But I've also learned that dwelling on the possibilities that are not fun to think about is not helpful unless there's a plan that I can make now while I am more functional that will make it better in the future. So like, if I am worried, oh man, I'm going to have to walk with canes again. How am I going to survive? Well, then maybe I plan to have us live in a house with no stairs,
Mm.
like
Yeah.
our next house. Or I figure out how to carry things like on my back or something. I don't know. That's a totally random thing that just popped into my head.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I think the crux of what you're trying to say basically is like just being intentional about everything.
Mhm.
Like being intentional with the steps that you're taking towards your goals, being intentional with the mindset that you have to have going into life, right? Like we all have our own different challenges.
Mhm.
And, kind of assessing our thoughts and finding out like, is that a helpful thought or is it a hindering thought?
Yeah.
And how can I help myself get from hindrance to like actually helpful again?
Yeah. I think a lot of the time we worry about like, what if I fail? What if this doesn't work? And if we have a thought like that, you can totally address it. So if I fail, this is what I'm going to do. If I don't get that goal that I'm going to want to achieve, then this is my backup plan. And having that in place makes you less anxious about it in the now and makes it easier not to dwell on the things like that.
Yeah, that's so good. So good. So tell me a little bit about kind of what your day to day looks like now, right? Some of the ways that you use that on your day to day, like that you check yourself. Like when you have negative thoughts, what are some ways that you can kind of reframe those thoughts into something that's more helpful?
Okay, so let's see. I have a lot of meetings on Mondays. And so my daughter has a lot of TV time on Mondays. And the result of that is not just her having more TV, but also her behavior is worse, for sure. And so I automatically am like, I am such a bad mom. Why am I doing this? Why do I think that this is a good idea? And when I notice those thoughts, then you can see them more clearly and actually change them so that you can think what you want to think and feel what you want to feel. So like I have the thought, I'm a bad mom. Well, okay, I'm a bad mom. That's like saying I am 100% a bad mom. But I took my daughter on a walk the other day and I held her hand and we had a lot of fun and we skipped together. So sometimes I'm a good mom. So I can't tell myself in my brain that I am a bad mom because your brain takes things in absolutes. So instead of saying I'm a bad mom, I can say, sometimes I feel like I'm a bad mom. Or I'm having the thought that I am a bad mom. Anything to separate you from the thought so that instead of it becoming your identity and controlling you, you are the one that is in control of it.
Yeah, I think that's so important. Like, I know a lot of moms really beat themselves up over, especially that thought, like, I'm a bad mom. I feel like every mom in the world has felt that way at least once, right?
Yeah.
And so I love being able to just kind of reframe it of like, I feel like I'm a bad mom, or like, right now I'm doing something that makes me feel like I'm a bad mom, but I know I'm not really like a bad mom. That's kind of ridiculous to say.
Mhm.
And just kind of finding a way to like think of it as more factual versus how I'm feeling. So I really like that. And then let's go back to, because you were talking about kind of that journey, right? Of
Yeah.
having MS and getting to running a marathon within a year, which is absolutely incredible. And so tell me a little bit about kind of at what point after being diagnosed with MS did you decide that I want to run a marathon? Like, how does something like that even, did you run marathons before that and you were like, I want to get back to that? Or was that a totally new thing for you?
So, first of all, it was a half marathon. So it's slightly less like insane. Um, But I have always been a runner. I ran through high school and junior high. I ran through college a little bit, and I love it. And so in my mind, I always have had the goal that I will run a marathon someday. And so it seemed smart to start with a half marathon. So I actually signed up for a half marathon and then found out I had MS a couple weeks after that. And so I ended up not being able to run that half marathon. So I had it in my mind that I had missed out because I wanted to do it. And so after I was feeling better, it was almost like a no-brainer. Like, this is something I've always wanted to do. And I have had to adjust my expectations of myself because, like, I ran that half marathon, but it was way slower than it would have been before. And I went between running a little and then I would walk a little, run a little, walk a little, because that was easier on my body. And so I had to make adjustments. But the thing is, I was still able to meet that goal. And that's something, too, that I think is really important to recognize, is that flexibility brings us more freedom. It's not like not pushing yourself hard enough or something. It's helping you reach another step forward. Yeah, because, like, as someone with a chronic progressive disease, the likelihood that I will be able to run more half marathons and, let's say, like, compete in the Olympics or something, like, the likelihood of that is fairly low because of the nature of my disease. But that doesn't have to stop me from ever running another half marathon. I just have to adapt in order to make it happen. I have to be okay with it not being exactly what I saw in my mind as a child.
What would you say to someone who's struggling with changing their mindset? They're looking at what they had envisioned and they feel less than if they don't hit that.
That is a great question, because that's something we all struggle with, because, well, especially as mompreneurs, we have very, very high expectations of ourselves as moms and as entrepreneurs. I think that the best thing to do in that case is to start noticing what thoughts you're having. Because it's our thoughts that create our feelings, which creates our reality. And so if you pay attention to what thoughts you're having, you'll notice, wow, I'm having a lot of thoughts that say I'm a bad mom for working on my business, or if I don't meet this goal, then I am not going to be successful in my business, or things like that. And once we notice those thoughts, then you can identify, hey, that's actually not true. And that doesn't help me to tell myself that lie. That's not true. Did that answer your question?
Yes, but I have a follow-up question.
Okay,
So
bring it on.
what, I love it. What if you're having these thoughts, but you're having a hard time identifying if it's true or not?
Okay. So first off, you write it down. So do you have an example of a thought that you thought of?
Well, not really, but like, say Say, for instance, if there's a mom who's sitting there and they're saying, I want to be able to make, 10K a month or something. And they're seeing other people who are making 10K a month and they did it within 30 days or whatever. And they're sitting here 3 months into it. They haven't even made half of that yet. And how is that all these other people are doing it and I'm not, so I must be stupid. And to them, they have the evidence to support that they're stupid because here's the other people who are doing it, but I'm not. Right. And so obviously from the outside, we could all sit there and be like, there's so many different factors going on here. You can't judge your intelligence by something like that. But for that person, that's what they've told themselves. And that's their reality.
Okay. So in that case, I would still write down the thought. And then I would have them ask themselves, what would you say to a friend if they told you that they were thinking this? So they're having the thought, I'm stupid because other people are doing this and they're way more successful than I am in this amount of time. So I must be stupid. So then what would you say to a friend? And if you think about it that way, then you come up with so many things like, oh, but you have a new kid and you're trying to do this. And you also are interested in all of these different things and your husband, blah, blah, blah. And so like looking at it from an outsider's perspective helps us see what's actually going on. So that can be helpful to help you see that it's not true. There's also the fact that, maybe you are stupid. Like, it's a possibility. And you have this pie of possibilities. It's like, I'm stupid, but there's also all of these other possibilities. And so is it helpful to say, I'm stupid? No. It's not helpful because you take that to mean that you're stuck at that level. So you say, I feel stupid, and I'm still going to do this. I would also say, start writing down all the evidence that you're not. Like, I'm not 100% stupid because I remembered to change my baby's diaper when it smelled poopy. So I must not be 100% stupid. Or someone knocked on the door and I went and answered and it was a salesman and I didn't just automatically buy what they were selling. So I must not be stupid because I didn't just get sucked into whatever they were trying to sell me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I love the, I may feel stupid, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I think that mentality is so important. And I think, especially in today's society where we're constantly told fluff to make us feel better because like our feelings are more important than a fact, or they're more important than progress, or they're more important than actually being a good person, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, feelings are so prized nowadays. And I think to the detriment of humanity, like if we're so ingrained in our feelings, we can't make progress because like you said, I may feel stupid or I may feel inadequate or I may feel like a bad mom. But if you keep showing up, you're giving yourself more opportunities to prove that thought wrong and to improve. Because like you said, what if you are stupid? What if you are kind of a bad mom? What if you are doing X, Y, and Z, right? Like dwelling on it doesn't help. But if you do stuff anyway, you can at least get better. Because if you give up, like there's no getting better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And thoughts like that really do ground us. Like not ground us in a good way. Like ground us, like make us stuck in the ground.
Yeah. That's so true. I think so many people get stuck in this, that mindset of just like, I can't achieve X, Y, and Z, or, I see all these other people doing it and they've got something that I don't. And it's funny because like after, spending so much time around high earners, high achievers, people who are incredibly competent and confident, right, in what they're doing, I've learned so much. And most of it is that like, they're just people who just keep at it. Like they just keep working and keep growing and keep learning. That's literally the difference between them and everybody else. Is everybody else, they tell themselves the story and then they don't try. And these people, they keep trying and they keep learning until eventually they're competent and then they blossom and they do what they need to do.
Yeah.
So
I like that because the stories we tell ourselves, that's what shapes our reality. And we could be living a parallel life with someone else and be completely oblivious to the similarities because of what we're telling ourselves that things mean.
Yeah. And I'd love to talk a little bit about, because because I know you have a whole lot of different stuff about micro habits and micro moments and things like that. And I'd like to be able to dive into that. So I have a feeling this whole call will just end up being like mindset mastery, and we're going to put it on the cool people doing cool stuff playlist. But I think this is really crucial. Like the mindset piece is, from what I've learned just as a business coach working with mompreneurs, the ones who are successful have a good mindset because they're willing to do the work that they need to do and not need so many people like telling them how great they are all the time to have the motivation to keep going. They just keep working at it. And then they become so successful because they had that drive and that motivation and they had the right mindset to do what it took to be successful, and not crumble every time they had a negative feeling. And so I think all of this is really important. And so I think like for, I guess if you do see a mom out there that's, maybe they are putting in they're putting in all the right efforts, like they've got the right mindset, but they're struggling with making momentum, or they're feeling overwhelmed with all the stuff that they're doing. I know the micro habits and micro moments are kind of like the key points there. So I'd love to have you kind of talk a little bit about that and how that would help them.
Okay. So first off, if we think of something as a huge thing, then the likelihood that we'll actually do it is low. I'm sure most people watching this have procrastinated studying for a test. And probably because it seems like a lot of work. It's easy to procrastinate things that seem like a lot of work. But when you take that lot of work and you split it up into a bunch of little works, and you just do a little work every day, you're still making progress towards the big work. And so making the most of the micro moments, those little moments that you have, that helps us establish balance in our lives. So a micro moment is like walking out to the mailbox to check the mail. I think that a lot of people would hurry out to the mailbox and then run back in because they're trying to do all of these things. Maybe they have something on the stove. They're worrying about child A who is doing something concerning, and they have to remember to pick up child B from the school early, and they're just worried and spinning. And so they use that time to continue to worry. But imagine if instead of using that time to simply worry more or get your emotions higher, what if instead you stepped outside, you took a breath of the outside air, you walked towards the mailbox, you heard the birds singing, you felt the feeling of the mailbox as you opened it, you saw the sky and how blue it was. Imagine how much more relaxed you would feel after the same length of time, just taking it in a different way. And we often allow our anxiety and fear and worry to control us. And if we are intentional, wow, that is not a word. If we are intentional about what we think about, then we can actually control the outcome. Did that make sense? Was that good? Okay.
Yes, yes. I love it. I love it. And then I think so. My follow-up question is, how do you control your mindset? And I know we kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, kind of reframing. But if somebody is walking out to the mailbox and they're saying, oh, I'm getting anxious, I'm trying to like pay attention to the sky, I'm trying to listen to the birds, but like I'm getting disrupted, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's the best way for someone to kind of correct themselves?
This is where the practice of mindfulness comes in.
Mm-hmm.
Mindfulness is being present in the moment, but it's actually the act of bringing your attention to the moment. So having a whole bunch of different thoughts that are swinging you everywhere, that's a normal human thing. And it doesn't mean you're not being mindful. When you have a thought that goes over there, then you say, oh, okay, I see that. And I'm focusing here.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have another thought over here and, oh, I see that. I'm focusing here. So you observe your thoughts as they're floating by like leaves on the river, but you're not picking up every leaf and studying it and then throwing it and picking up the next one and studying it and adding it to your pile. So you have this huge pile of leaves by you that you're getting super itchy on you and stuff.
Yeah.
Instead, you're watching the leaves pass. That's mindfulness. And that can be helpful. So when I talk about these things, it sounds like I might be saying, okay, just think something different and you'll be happy. But
Yeah.
it's not that easy. Like, we can't just go from having all these thoughts and not even noticing them to intentionally thinking a whole bunch of really awesome things and dominating the world. Like, it doesn't happen overnight. It's a slower process. Again, coming back to the micro moments, micro habits, small steps at a time. So maybe you walk to the mailbox and you notice, like, you take a deep breath, but then you get distracted worrying about Child Day again. You still made progress, and it's still a good thing. And then the next time you go out, you take a deep breath and you notice the sky is really blue. And then you still worry about Child A, this problem child. So it's very small steps, and each small step is improvement. And it's so easy to discount any sort of progress because we're looking at the big change, which we see a lot of people's big changes, but we don't see their little changes as easily.
I love that. Yeah. And I think that's so true. I think everybody does that. It's like you look at the big change, and it's like, oh, I can't wait to get to X, Y, and Z. And then everything in the middle just feels like it's taking forever, right? Like it's taking so long for me to get to whatever stage I want to get to, whatever thing I want to get to. But it's like those little steps are the same thing that someone else went through, right? And we don't know how long it took them to get through anything. And quite frankly, like, again, is that thought helpful? Is it even helpful to compare timelines? Right? Because otherwise you're just going to get stuck. So I love all of that. And then how can someone, so if somebody's saying, okay, I'm ready to start making those small changes, I'm ready to start getting control of my life again, right? Have that queen mentality of being able to handle life, delegate, and just manage everything, I know this is kind of where we start talking about micro habits. So I'd like you to kind of chat a little bit about that.
Okay. So micro habits are teeny tiny habits. They're micro. And you stick them in the micro moments. So if you have the goal to, let's just say you have a goal to exercise more frequently, which is not quantifiable. So that's a horribly phrased goal, but we're going to go with it. You have the goal to exercise more. And you feel like you don't have time. So what you do is you take small bits of time throughout your day and connect it with a habit. So you probably always brush your teeth. So what if you do 5 squats every time you brush your teeth? Or maybe when you're making breakfast for the kids, as they start eating, well, no, because you want to eat too. So forget that one. I'm just making stuff up. So situations. I'm not making all of the stuff up, just the situations.
Like cooking while you're doing squats. I used to do that one after I had my second. I'd be cooking at the stove and I'd have them like strapped to me and I'd be doing squats while I was cooking at the stove.
That's
that worked out pretty well. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, I have one. So you go to the grocery store and when you come home, you have all the groceries to carry inside and the kids. So if you really think about, okay, I'm going to have good form, I'm going to carry these groceries, and instead of just lugging them in as fast as you possibly can, you take a moment to do like a bicep curl on each side with your grocery bags.
Love it.
Or you can do a squat again. Maybe the only exercise you ever do is squatting constantly.
You have a great butt, but that's all.
Yeah. So that's an example of a micro habit.
Love that. And so you were with your business, right? You were helping people kind of establish micro habits, get into the proper mindset for micro moments. And through that journey, you've learned that the problem that a lot of these people had was that they just needed more of their time back. And the way to do that is to set up these systems, right? So tell me a little bit about kind of what you're exploring there and some of the findings that you're having.
Yeah. So when you systemize something, it's like creating an SOP, a standard operating procedure. Like you say, okay, every time I vacuum the floor, I'm going to start in this room because that's right by where the vacuum is. And then I'll go to this room because then I don't have to unplug the vacuum. And then I'll go to this one. So you come up with the most efficient way to do something, and then you repeat that every time you do it. So what I'm finding is that there are SOPs, systems for everything that we do. Like there can be one for exercise. There's like the most efficient way to cook. And it might be a little different for every person because we all have different strengths and weaknesses. But as a whole, there is a very clear step-by-step that you can follow for almost everything that we do in our lives and in our businesses.
I love that. And how are you helping people build those out? Are you doing it for them? What's kind of the way that you're going to be assisting people moving forward?
So I do help people set them up, but I also am transforming my school group. So it will have all of these systems, SOPs in that group, and you can pay monthly to have access to all of those. And I'll be regularly adding things in, because there are so many things we could do that there's no way I could get everything in there all at once. So I'll be adding systems in there as time goes on. And then I'll be helping people one-on-one as well.
Love that. And so as you're doing all these things, you went from having MS, you ran a half marathon, and now you're helping other people kind of systemize their life and get into the proper mindset to be able to live super efficient lives and hit their goals and all of those things. What has been, I guess, the most rewarding part? Because there's so much in there, right? It's like complete chaos to you figuring out how to function and hit your own goals. And now you're helping other people, which I think is just amazing. What's kind of the process that, took you from having MS all the way to realizing like, I want to help other people do this too?
I don't know if I completely understand the question, but I can start talking if you'd like me to. So having MS is an unfortunate thing. Nobody would want it, and I wouldn't want anyone else to have it. But we all have challenges, and this is just one of my challenges. And so the fact that I have learned so much by having this challenge, it's amazing, because having this challenge has taught me so much that I can now help other people to do, so they don't have to have the same challenge that I did. And that's the beauty of humanity, is that we all have different lives, different experiences, and we can learn stuff and then teach it to other people, so they don't have to learn the same lesson from the same method. Because it's a lot easier for people to hear about micro habits and micro moments and try applying it. It's a lot easier for them to do that than for them to have a diagnosis and become crippled and then recover. Like, that's a lot harder.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I love that you're using your experience and and that's inspired you essentially to go out and help other people, because like you said, it's like not everybody has to end up in a situation like that in order to improve their life. So yeah. I love that. If you were to talk to another mompreneur, we're going to start wrapping it up, but if you were to talk to another mompreneur who is struggling with trying to figure out how to do all of the things all of the time, right? That's what a lot of them kind of feel like. What would be your advice for them?
Stop trying to do all of the things all of the time. Look first at what's most important to you, which is probably your family. And then find the ways that you can fit the other stuff in. So I'm guessing family, your own health, your business are important. And if you're taking care of your family and your business and yourself, not necessarily in that order, because yourself should be before the business. If you're taking care of yourself, then you'll be able to better meet the needs of others. So it's like on airplanes, they have the oxygen masks. And when they fall down, you're supposed to put your own mask on before you help anyone else put theirs on. And that's not because no one else is as important as you. It's because if you put your own mask on, then you're better able to help the other people too. And you won't pass out or something and be unable to even put your own on. So in your busy life, trying to do all of the things, you might feel like, oh, well, now she's saying I need to do all of these things for myself and self-care and blah, blah, blah. But I can guarantee that if you looked at your life, you would have at least 30 minutes a day that you were using in a way that you felt like was relaxing or for yourself, but is actually not rejuvenating at all. So instead of sitting on the couch for 5 minutes scrolling, what if instead you laid on the floor and practiced deep breathing for 5 minutes? Totally doable, and it would have a longer lasting effect on your well-being.
I love that. Swapping different dopamine hits, essentially.
Uh-huh.
I love that. I was just reading about that actually yesterday. Dopamine maps is what they're calling it. And you map out like where you get all your different dopamine hits throughout the day. And you look at like realistically what you're doing right now and like an ideal situation. And it really helps you kind of see like the difference between like what you're doing now and where you could be spending your time to actually make an impact. You know, instead of scrolling on the phone, maybe you're playing with your kids. Maybe instead of, like you said, scrolling on something, doing some deep breathing or, you know, doing some stretching, right? Something like that. And just kind of getting that dopamine from something else. So I love that. And then if there was, you know, if you're looking at a mompreneur who's trying to grow a business and they're trying to, you know, while raising their kids and they're getting frustrated with the amount of time it's taking them to hit their goal, what would be the advice that you'd give them?
Well, someone told me this the other day, and they told themselves, one more day. Give it one more day. And then the next day they got their first client. So we never know when it's going to take off, when it's going to happen. But if we give it one more day and give it one more day and then give it one more day, it will happen if we stick with it.
I love that. We'll have your links in the description below. Did you have anything else you wanted to share before we wrap it up?
Just really quick, as mompreneurs, we feel a lot of guilt around working, guilt around parenting, and like you feel guilty about not parenting your kids while you're working, and you feel guilty about not working when you're parenting your kids because there's a lot to do. And so if you're struggling with this guilt, I want you to look at your thoughts, but also take a moment to look at what you are grateful for, because guilt comes because you care about something. So if you focus instead of on the guilt, you focus on feeling grateful that you have that thing, then that will help you to be more efficient and happier.
I love that. That's beautiful. I'd also heard something, it was saying like anxiety and gratitude come from the same part of the brain, and you can't feel like if you feel one, you can't feel the other. So if you're anxious about something, you can't feel grateful about it. But if you feel gratitude, then you can't feel anxious about it.
That's cool. I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, love that. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. I appreciate it. And like I said, we'll have those links below so people can check you out. And we'll have to have you on again, you know, at some point in the future.
That sounds amazing. Let's do it.
Awesome. All right. Thank you.